Alrighty, lads. It is I, Free700. We are back with some Warhammer 40k lore. This time, what the fuck is the history of the Dark Mechanicum? Now, down below is going to be gameplay footage of the Dark Mechanicum at work, doing their nasty tech heresies. But I will be talking completely unrelated to the video in question, so enjoy the gameplay / commentary. So, the Dark Mechanicum, where would it all begin? Well, that's kind of a hard question. Some would argue it started with Moravec, a scientist who decided that he could bring about the Omnissiah by personally forging man and machine together, because he believed humanity's limitations would mean that they could never reach the highest level of science unless they surpass their human form. That could technically be the Dark Mechanicum. He did make a lot of insane inventions that the Emperor himself had to lock away in a vault known as the Vault of Moravec. But I think the real Dark Mechanicum today is very, very different. You see, the Dark Mechanicum today does not really adhere to the Omnissiah. Some of them do. Some do. Some heretics, as they're called, do believe that the Omnissiah is a chaos god, which would make sense considering that artificial intelligence, when artificial intelligence is made, immediately jumps to the conclusion that chaos is right. So it could be totally possible that, hey, the Omnissiah is actually a chaos god. But majority of heretics usually just believe in the chaos powers or just don't even care. They're too busy studying their own machines and innovations to really give a fuck about theology. So, the Dark Mechanicum as it stands today, where would it really start? I would argue it starts with Celebor Hall. Celebor Hall was the fabricator general at the time. And you see, one of the interesting things about Celebor Hall is that he firmly believes the Emperor is not the Omnissiah. That he believes that the Emperor, while, yes, a kindred spirit in the sense that he is a man of science and wishes to pursue science, he is not someone that the Mechanicus should even be associating with, because his definition of science is very different than theirs. This is very interesting to explore further on, because you see, Celebor Hall was actually the one who signed the Treaty of Mars. He was the one who discussed with the Emperor. He's the one who broke the feud between Mars and Terra. Because for you see, Mars and Terra have always been at war. There were other warlords in the past who went from Terra and ascended to try and go out into the stars, and they decided to attack Mars, and Mars always beat them back. And Mars has never really been too unified. I use that word very scantily, because you see, Mars has a very loose definition of the word unified. Even to this point, while they're signing this treaty, even now in 40k, they're still pretty much the same quote-unquote unified state, where they will all unite to fight a common threat, sure, and they all do call themselves the Mechanicus, great, but they're not really unified. In fact, it's better off to say that they're more clan-based, where each individual forge city, individual foundry, those are all going to be separate factions of Mechanicus who all wage war equally against one another, but then they all equally respect the authority of one another. It's very odd, I know, it's very confusing. Trust me, if you ever read the book Mechanicum, it is a very interesting Warhammer HORUS Heresy book, and it covers in great detail a lot what I'm talking about here. But essentially what happened was the Emperor, he unified all of Terra, and he needed manufacturing capabilities. This is where the Mechanicus comes in. And when he came to Mars, he demonstrated by arriving to Mars on a specific day that their religion dictates that a spirit of the Omnissiah would come in. And this spirit of the Omnissiah would, of course, be the Emperor. And he would come to this exact spot, find a broken Titan, put his hand on it, and say, "Machine, heal thyself." And the machine healed itself. Now, this is more or less a tribute to just the Emperor having ridiculous godlike powers. But news spread very fast, and a lot of people believed he really is the embodiment of their religion. that he is possibly a aspect of his religion. Like, for example, Christianity, you have the God, you have Jesus, and then you have the Holy Spirit. This is much like the cult of the Mechanicus. You got the Omnissiah, you got the Emperor, and then you got the Machine Spirit. This is more or less their religion now. Now they have three. Now they have their Jesus, which is the Emperor. Some, like Caleb Decima, fully, wholeheartedly agreed that, yeah, Mars should work for the Emperor, because if not, then it's heresy. But Kelbor Hall and a few others who weren't there to witness this event, but they were the ones in charge of Mars in itself, they were very skeptical about the Emperor, and they believed that he was really just threatening them, that, in all honesty, the Emperor wasn't really giving Mars a choice. He was more or less saying, you're going to serve me, and all your foundries are going to bow down to me, and in exchange, I won't wipe out your pathetic civilization and your stupid religion, which I'm probably going to do anyways later in the future. So Kelbor Hall agreed to sign, but him and many of the leaders of the Mechanicus did all agree that he is not a aspect of the Omnissiah. He is just some guy who took advantage of a very specific situation. Some of them even plant the seed that maybe he created part of their religion specifically so it was easier for him to take control, which, what we know about the Emperor, that definitely may seem to be the case. Like, are you telling me you didn't plan to arrive on this very specific day, to arrive at this very specific location, and just heal a machine in front of everyone with your bare hand? Like, that sounds really coincidental. Either way, Kelbor Hall was a little pissed with this Treaties of Mars, because it put a lot of restrictions on them. Like, they couldn't research artificial intelligence, which they couldn't research anyways due to their cults. But now it was firm in law that they couldn't do it. And they're being told by an outsider what they can and cannot do. Like, anytime they wanted to expand to another world, they kind of had to ask permission. It wasn't really a nice, cohesive bond between these two factions. It was more like, hey, Mechanicum, I'm still waiting for 300 lasguns, and you're telling me that you're busy. I don't care what you're doing right now. Stop attacking each other. Focus on what my needs are. I don't care what your needs are. It was a very one-way street in Kelbor Hall's mind. But really, the Mechanicus has never seen such prosperity before. They were starting to get resources from the Imperium of Man in droves. Their foundries have almost never stopped, which is, again, that's pretty new for them. Sometimes they've had periods where their factories had lulls, where they had to find and scrap alloys from broken down machines and go find and fight other Mechanicus dudes to steal their shit so they could break it down and put it in their machines and their foundries. Now they didn't have to do that too much. Now they could just focus on bickering with each other. Which, again, this is going to play a big part in what I'm saying about their history, is that a lot of times the Mechanicus would fight with itself, even before the Horus Heresy began. And the worst it would get is that they would deploy their Titans. But if they ever did deploy their Titans, they never wounded the Titans. Because, again, in their religion, they viewed the Titans as the closest thing to the embodiment of the Omnissiah himself. So whatever disputes they may have may spill over to the Titans, but never would their disputes be that great that they're willing to risk damaging a vision of the Omnissiah. No conflict is ever worth that much. No sacrifice is ever that great. So they'll just flash a little bit of, missiles at each other here and there. Nothing that would actually hurt the Titans, but just enough to kind of just flash each other, much like birds and reptiles. And then they would back off on this very intimate mating ritual. And then they would continue doing their normal bullshit, which is infiltrating each other, attacking each other in small gang violence, just the normal bullshit that's been on Mars for the past few hundred years. Now, for over 200 years, the Great Crusade happened. And during the Great Crusade, the Mechanicus prospered, as I said earlier. But interestingly enough, some of the Mechanicus branches started to form their own technology, started to form their own bands. Again, This is why I like the Mechanicus a lot, is that I think I've covered it before, but every individual Mechanicus Forge world has totally different beliefs. Like, totally different beliefs. Some of them are more emotional, some of them are more logical, some of them have great disdain for humanity to the point that they don't even want a message from an Inquisitor. They'll just do their duties for the Imperium so that way they never look at a normal human ever again, because they do not want to see an unaugmented human. Others, they view augmentation as a necessity, like, you only get augmentation if you absolutely need it. If you don't absolutely need it, don't get augmented. It's a waste. Again, this is the Mechanicus. They are very diverse in their opinions on things. I find it very great. It's refreshing to see that. But interestingly enough, during the burning of Prospero, this is where it gets a little interesting. Again, this all relates to the Dark Mechanicum. You see, not only did the Thousand Suns kick ass despite losing 90% of the planet and now deciding to defend themselves, but the Mechanicus that was on there was also being destroyed. So they decided to join the fight with the Thousand Suns and help fight off the Space Wolves and the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence. And they whipped out some really crazy automatons that some of them had psychic capabilities. This is arguably the first tech heresies we've ever seen en masse. Now, this explains a lot because, one, the planet of Prospero does believe in open knowledge. That knowledge should never be restricted, that knowledge should be open. And if you intermingle that with the Mechanicus, well, you're going to end up with a Dark Mechanicum very easily. And this is where we would see arguably the first battle of the Dark Mechanicum. Now, of course, the Space Wolves and the Custodes just view this as tampering by the Thousand Suns not knowing their place, deciding to interfere with the Mechanicus's toys. But reality is, it's like, I don't know, man. These machines look more like they were made by the Mechanicus with Prospero engravings and stuff like that, but really it just looks like the Mechanicus themselves were experimenting with shit that they really should not have been experimenting with. And then this leads to Kelber Hall again, back on Mars. You see, Horus knew that when he declared war against the Imperium, he's going to need munitions, he's going to need armor, but what he's going to need more is he's going to need for his enemies to not have those weapons and armor. So what he did was he agreed to a secret pact with Kelber Hall, the Fabricator General of Mars. And what he agreed was that you get unlimited research to anything. I don't care what you research. It's fine. Artificial intelligence, great. You want to, I don't know, make space marines, that's fine. I don't really care. But in exchange, I need you to help me and provide me all the munitions, all the top-notch weaponry that you've ever invented. I want it all. Now, Kelber Hall was a little intimidated by this, going, I don't know, Horus. I'm going to need a little bit more than that. To which Horus said, you will get unlimited access to the vaults of Morvac. The vaults that are locked away as part of the Treaty of Mars agreement. And that's because they contain nothing but unrestricted technology, forbidden knowledge that even the Mechanicus deemed as unholy. Thankfully, 200 years of spreading atheism, seems like most of the Magi have kind of accepted this, that maybe the Omnisci is not real, and that the Emperor is just some great dude. So, many of the Magi agreed with the Fabricator General. Yeah, fuck yeah. Let's get innovative for once. This is new. Not only do we get to experiment and create STCs, which has never been done before, not only do we get an archive full of technology that is considered forbidden just because of how arcane it is, now we're able to do whatever the fuck we want. Because you see, the Emperor forbade them from researching psychic potential. And many Mechanicus were sneakily going behind the Emperor's back researching psychics, researching things like psychic machinery, psychers in general, anything. There's even one guy who accidentally did the unthinkable and hit up a normal kid to a device that would directly connect him to the Astronomicon, which nearly blew up the planet of Mars, by the way, because the power of the Astronomicon all focal pointed into one single person. Yikes. But we're going to get back to that. So obviously a lot of the Magi and a lot of the Fabricator General's retinue were ecstatic about working with Horus, but they couldn't do it quite yet. You see, Horus wasn't ready yet. Instead, what he wanted them to do was prepare, to plan, to get ready for when it would happen. So for the next few years, the Dark Mechanicus did just that. They stopped supplying the Loyalist legions. This, of course, is what led to where the Mark IV Space Marine combat armor was very common sight amongst the traders, because that was the latest type. It had better armor, better everything. But the other Space Marine legions had to make their own power armor. This is very interesting, as they were still stuck with the Mark III. So as the years went by in the Horus Heresy, the Tech Marines and the Artificers had to just come together and just create the new armor called the Heresy pattern armor, which is a Mark V. But this is very interesting because the Dark Mechanicus was already planning this ahead of time. They were already saying, oh, Ultramarines, you guys don't need this new armor. We're a little backed up right now with all the requests from the Imperial Army, from Horus's faction of legions. We're just a little busy right now. But we'll put you at the top of our list for the next batch that we make. Don't you worry. And then, you know, a few years later, oh yeah, don't worry, that Order of Power Armor, we're still working on it. It's just Horus is in a lot of battles right now. You know them Emperor's Children. Those Emperor's Children keep on dying in droves, so we gotta keep giving them new armor. I mean, we don't want the Emperor's Children to go unarmored now, don't we? Don't worry, Ultramarines, you're next on our list. And then, of course, it never fucking happened. That's when the Horus Heresy full on blew, and things got really crazy really quickly. You see, the moment the Horus Heresy broke out, Kelber Hall did something very interesting. He attacked Magma City. He damn near took over all, and I mean all, of Mars. Because what he did was he created the first thing ever known as scrap code. Now, scrap code, for those of you who do not know, is like a virus. But what it does is it spreads the taint of chaos through the synaptic links that all of Mars has. So, if a Skitarii was to get infected, then the entire unit would be infected, along with the Magi that they're connected to, along with the Fabricator General, who's, of course, above him. So it's like, oh my god, the scrap code is spreading everywhere. But, as luck would have it, before all of the Mechanicus was overwritten and turned to chaos, very luckily for us, idiots exist in the world. And wherever there's an idiot, you can bet your ass that he's going to destroy a genius's plan. Because you see, that boy I was talking about who was hooked up to the Astronomicon, who nearly destroyed the planet, yeah. What happened was he flooded, as an effort to save face, the Mechanicus engineer, who was a jackass scientist who really should not have been messing with this stuff. He decided, when he saw what was going on to Mars, he decided to hook up the boy who's still, his soul is being eviscerated, just blasted with the powers of the Astronomicon. He decided to hook up the Astronomicon to the neural networks that all the Mechanicus is currently being invaded by. And this worked. This dumbass plan actually worked. It damn near destroyed Mars. As I said, the planet, like the crust of the planet, nearly got fucking shattered. But the Astronomicon, which is the own Emperor's light, his own power, was able to purge the Chaos Taint from the Neurolinks completely. Now, this is where it leaves Kelber Hall and a lot of his Magi in kind of a weird position. You see, many of the people they just took over, they didn't realize what they were signing up for. And now that they just lost their free will, they just lost a lot of their own personal autonomy to this Chaos Worshipper. They were not happy. You see, out of all the Forge worlds on Mars, let's just say there's 100, right? About 3 or 4 of them were loyal to the Emperor by the time the Horus Heresy broke out. And then, on top of that, another 10 to 20 of them were secretly double agents. They were secretly providing Malcador's Sigilin with still new weapons and armor, and then also providing Horus with weapons and armor, because they didn't really know which side to really take. But then you got the rest of them who are traitors, because they just like the idea of a free Mars, or maybe they do like the idea of chaos. Well, now they just got taken over and brain controlled against their will. They were not too happy. Now it's a good 50-50 fight. And now, Mars was doomed. This is where the plan for Horus Heresy was utterly shattered by a dumbass who decided to just blast the Astronomicon, of all fucking things, through the synapse nodes that they're all connected to. Which, personally, I'm surprised he didn't just fry everybody on the planet. I honestly thought he was just going to wipe everyone out. But nope. His dumbass plan fucking worked. That's called a Nat 20. God damn it. Now, after this major defeat, the Loyalist blockade started to break on Mars. And with this, Kelber Hall and a lot of his buddies decided to jump ship and get the hell out before everything crumbles around them. But of course, the moment they get off of Mars, they decide to join the attack force on Terra. As, you know, just to show to Horus, hey, we're still with you, buddy. Don't worry. We're not going back on our deal just yet. The problem is that the Mars Mechanicus couldn't really follow because they just got devastated. That was amazing. They lost Titans, Titans versus Titans. Night Houses were joining the conflict. By the way, majority of Night Houses did, in fact, betray the Emperor. It was just a devastating conflict from Mars. But the Mechanicus, the Dark Mechanicus, did something more devastating than ever, which is that their innovative weaponry really took a toll on both Mars and the defenders of Terra, because their innovative weaponry was just bizarre. You had things like the Abominable Intelligence, the Defilers, you had bile cannons, so you had all this weird, like, chaosy, but also just science-y weapons and war gear that the Mechanicus has never seen before, and they're just getting blasted by this. Sure, they had mechadendrites and stuff, but this was something totally new. This was something totally out of their field. How do you protect against a plague like a bile cannon that infects wires and makes the wires rust and decay? Like, how do you fight that? This was devastating indeed. And this has led to where, when the Horus Heresy was over, the Dark Mechanicus really jumped ship and they decided to go into the Eye of Terror. Now, it's very interesting to note is that the now Dark Mechanicus, now they're inside the Eye of Terror, they really don't care too much about chaos, honestly. Most of the time, they're just more preoccupied with their own innovations, their own learning. And to them, that's the highest thing they could strive for, is this innovation. Researching new paths of technology, even if it's been discovered before. But at least the individual is the one who discovered it for himself. This innovative, this creativity. And it's very odd at the same time, because they have these humongous factory worlds that are just constantly churning out products like defilers, munitions, armor. But the thing is that they are not grounded by reality anymore. They don't need to go out and mine for alloys. They could just pray to the Dark Gods, and the Dark Gods will provide. They could ask a Space Marine warband, hey, if you guys want munitions from us, I'm looking at you, Black Legion, then you're going to have to give us a bunch of slaves and shit, and we'll throw them inside this burning cauldron, announce a few incantations, and then boom, you'll get your munitions. Stuff like that. And it makes it very interesting to look at the Dark Mechanicus today versus how they were way back when. Back when, they were very upset with the Emperor because the Emperor forbade them from researching Psychers. Yet here comes the Emperor with his own Psyker Titans that they've never built. And they're like, whoa, the Emperor, you built these Titans? How fucking dare you? We almost want to break the Mars Treaty right here and now because we're so mad that you built a Titan without us knowing. But now here they are, just indiscriminately building shit, researching shit, imbuing demons into machinery, imbuing weapons with the warp. There's actually a lot of heretics who are kind of like sorcerers, honestly. They're casting spells and shit, but it's not spells of them being psychers. It's actually spells from having spells locked away in technology. By putting power in these technologies, they're able to draw from it. So almost like them holding a glass orb full of electricity, and then you just see him put his giant metallic mechadendrite hand on top of it, and he just whips out a fucking fireball out of it just by rubbing against its surface. Looks like magic, looks like sorcery, but it's actually some arcane, crazy technology. Besides that, this has been Free 700. I'm out. I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay, and as always, I hope you guys learned something. You guys learned a lot about Celebar Hall, you guys learned a lot about how Mars operates in general, and now you've learned a lot about how the Dark Mechanicum came to be. Now, besides that, see you guys next time.